Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good morning,
You guys,
Rob.
can you hear me okay?
Hear you fine. You hear me?
Yep, I can hear you great. I'm in the on the road this morning, um, but look forward to a really good discussion here. I just won't be able to see everybody that's on.
Oh, you can hear me. Your
Yes,
video stopped and just sound
I'm sorry.
updated.
Who was that? Who was that just
Yeah.
speaking?
Bill
I could, yeah, I couldn't
Tyson.
hear you. Oh, Bill, how you
Bill
doing?
Tyson.
Hey, Bill.
Good.
Is it in there that you're waiving appraisal? Yes. Okay, so we're good there. Okay. All right, and your attorney is, did you give me the?
Danielle, can you hear me? Oops, that's on the phone. Okay.
Leave it now, leave it on. What happened?
Sound check. Sorry. Fred, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
All right, perfect. All right. So 8:31. Fred, how many we're on now? So get started.
16.
Okay, perfect. So today I want to just talk a little bit about something that may not be adopted, and only four ways, and any other way fits into these four categories. One is the the productivity per person, and I want to put that one first because whether you have 2 or 14 team members, it's a lot easier, and I think it's a healthier business model to improve the production per person on our team. Okay, and a lot of things I'm going to talk about are going to revolve around that principle. The second principle is to increase your team size or add more members. Recruiting to grow the team. Recruiting is, onboarding issues, identity issues to make sure you have good cultural fits. That's the second one. The third piece is controlling your expenses. And that doesn't mean cutting expenses. That means managing expenses and making sure that they have a positive return on investment. Okay, and with this principle, we're going to talk a little bit about data-driven decision making instead of emotional decision making. And I for one have been guilty of making emotional decisions because I feel, oh, this person's doing a good job, and maybe I need to be a little bit harder on this other person. And if you look at the data, it's the true equalizer, right? The quote I talk about often is, when the Giants won the Super Bowl, the next year they had a pretty lousy record. The media was trying to say, hey, do you feel like you're the best, 5-7 team in the NFL? And he said, no, we are what our record says we are. We're 5-7. We have a losing record. We have a lot of improvement to do. If you have team members that are underperforming, or you have team members that are squandering resources that you're giving them, we need to have data that drives that, not our personal feelings towards the individual. And then the last piece is increased income per transaction. Okay, and that can either be increasing our commission rate or our margin, or selling higher priced homes. This one seems like it's a little bit harder to, you can intentionally move towards higher priced homes, but that's a big shift. And I think if we do everything right, we will be able to hold our margins with these changes. I don't really see any major increase in our margins from what we're doing. So first thing to focus on is productivity per person. and how do we handle that? My thoughts on that go to some notes I've taken from different podcasts and different people that have influenced me. Skill set, mindset, work habits. Skill set, mindset, work habits is probably the simplest description about what's going to get us where we need to be. Those all are part of the culture that we build. Do we have a learning based culture where our team members are willing to come in to practice, to be vulnerable, to role play, to do the things that they need to do to grow? Do they have the mindset where they see all this noise and change happening in the market as being a opportunity of a career, or are they fearful of what it might look like a year from now? And I think the reality is nobody knows exactly what it's going to look like a year from now. But some people are going to make a year from now look a lot worse just because of their mindset. Okay, or if they have bad work habits or get distracted. Positive mindset, a bias for learning, a measurement of skills, consistency, action, and the performance of income producing activities will all help us with the metrics that we're looking at here. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments?
Rob, I would add time management.
Time management.
Yeah.
So I think time management is going to be a sum of productivity per person, right? And time management, everybody has the same amount of time. It's about what we do with that time, right, Charles?
100%.
And do you think that if you have a team member that's doing $1.5 million for 3 years, that there's a possibility that they're just unlucky, or do you think that they're following the wrong playbook? It's for you, Charles.
I'm sorry, Rob, can you repeat that? There's some background noise.
So if somebody's performing, only doing $1.5 million or $2 million in total volume for the last 2 years, is there any chance that they're unlucky, or do you think that they're following the wrong playbook, or maybe have a bad mindset?
Following the wrong playbook, for sure.
Right. And if they're on our team, we have a responsibility to help them, and helping them could either be getting them on that right track, getting them in the right playbook, or unfortunately at times, exiting them from the team, or maybe even the business, because not everybody's meant to be in the business, right?
Correct. That transition them to a competitor team.
Yeah, or put them into referral, or let them realize that this isn't the right thing for them. Is that has integrity in the way that we manage the team.
1000%.
And Charles, you come from a corporate background, right? And I imagine that the negatives to corporate is a lot of red tape, right? A lot of burdensome processes. But probably the positives are that corporations tend to be very unemotional and very strictly data driven, correct?
Correct.
And, we're in a very personalized business. Dealing with our clients individually is very personal. And then when we transition to becoming a team leader, we need to put a different hat on, and we need to have a different mindset. And I would say that the margin for error that we've all played with in the past 2 to 3 years is shrinking, or perhaps even gone. And that team, in 2022, there were still people that were struggling. If you've had a team since 2022, you probably could look back and find members of your team that were underperforming in perhaps one of the easiest markets that we were in. They said that they couldn't get offers accepted. There was no inventory. They had all those reasons and excuses. And right, am I in and out?
You're cutting in and out.
Yeah, you were very garbled,
Right.
Rob, but I thought maybe it was my internet connection. So I didn't really hear the last 45 seconds or so.
Yeah, cutting in and out.
Right. Let me turn my. Can you hear me better now that my video's off?
Much better. Now
Better.
we can't hear you at all.
Recording in progress.
Still can't hear you,
All
Rob.
right, can you hear me now? All right,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I have my video off to try to make it a little bit better. So I said that, there were people in 2022 on teams that struggled, and now they're completely not viable. And what I'm suggesting is that we take a more proactive stance to try to help the teams execute the plays and the playbooks and the plans that work. And if they don't have the culture, the mindset, the bias for learning and pivoting, then we're probably best to exit them from our team and or the industry. If they are with us because they don't want to pay a monthly bill or for whatever reason they're with us. Does that make sense? And can
100.
you hear me?
Absolutely. And yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Fantastic. And real estate agents in general, tend to be, higher on the emotional scale than on the data-driven scale. I mean, many successful agents don't have a bias for doing spreadsheets and measuring all the metrics to drive their business. But as you grow your team, and even if you're a small team with just a showing agent, having all the data to decide what investments are paying off, what are not paying off, where do you invest more money, where do you invest less money, are critical to growing a business instead of having a job as a salesperson. Business is, simply put, business is math. Time and resources should be reallocated to the individuals that provide the biggest return. Okay, they should be dedicated towards people because they need to make an additional sale. If Joe converts at 3% and Mary converts at 12%, we should be giving as much business to Mary, who's going to convert at a higher percentage, so that we can get money back and invest in other things and try to get our underperformers on par with standard. So emotional gut decisions, things of that nature, are really, really, really bad barometers and bad foundations to make our business decisions on. There you go. Does anybody have a weekly or a monthly report where you measure your team members' performances? And if so, what do you look at? Anybody? So, Chopper, you have a pretty big team. Do you at least measure like how many under contracts and closings per team member per month? and share that?
Yeah, they have a minimum standard. Patrick and Emily do the one-on-ones with the team members. I have Patrick managing the team. And he goes over their goals. Listen, you're gonna have your A players and you're gonna have your B and C players, you know. We offer to them many tools, but as many of us know, it just won't change. I mean, when I had 35 sales reps throughout the United States as a furniture manufacturer, I had my A players, B players, and C players, even when I would go to visit with them. The only time they did business is when I showed up. So it's just human nature, you know. I think it comes down to a matter of quality and not quantity. It's sometimes it's discouraging, but it's human nature. Some people just can't change. Some people look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. I'm like, well, change it. You know, that's up to them. But yeah, we give them a minimum standard, and Patrick and Emily discuss with them. They have a weekly one-on-ones. But sometimes it feels like pushing a rock up a hill. That's what it is.
Right. Right, and I hate to always lean into Glenn like with Sisu, but Glenn, did you have people that exited once the accountability came in, and how did you feel about that?
No, they actually didn't exit. They performed.
So you didn't lose anybody at all when you amped up the accountability?
No.
And I mean, there's one glaring example of somebody who every time there's a hey, you know what, you're not making your numbers, there's a miracle that happens, right?
You know, all of a sudden he begins to perform. But yeah, I think the difference is that it's not there's no monthly. I didn't answer the question that you asked because we don't do it monthly. We have it on a big dashboard. So they see it every moment of the day when they're in the office or on their phone, and we review it every morning.
And you have a huddle or a team meeting every morning?
Every morning.
And what's the attendance rate?
Almost everyone every time. I very rarely have people. Actually, when they can't make it, they profusely apologize.
And you mind sharing like how long it is and what do you cover just generally?
15 minutes. There's no BS. You're not allowed, like if you want to BS, join the call 5 minutes early and do it. And when we hit the call, starts off with a morning gratitude of some type. I require 2 on the call from somebody, something that they've got to be grateful for. Doesn't matter who does it. People usually jump in, and then it moves right into dials, we call it. So everyone has dials on their phone, the task that they were supposed to do the prior day. And we review the dials to see if anyone's in the orange. Orange means you've met your goal. Blue means you're off track. So the people who hit the orange tell how they hit it, and then it moves to the next person, next person. We only review 3 dials: conversations, appointments met, and appointments set. And then we wrap the call and move on for the day.
And those are all your leading indicators to business, right? You said conversations, appointments set, and appointments met.
Yeah, I was measuring all kinds of stuff before. None of them mattered. As soon as we started measuring these 3, you know, like right now, I think we got 57 total year to date signed. Last year, we were half of that.
And Glenn, did you pick up like some of the cadence for your meetings from when you went to Sisu and you know were around a lot of bigger teams?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly where, and every team that was doing it was measuring very similarly.
Fred, or does anybody can see how many people are on here today?
29.
29. So I want to expose everybody to, you know, what Glenn was exposed to, which, you know, you went away for what, 3 days, 4 days, Glenn, to the Sisu event.
Yeah, 3 days.
And, you know, look, you're not going to get everything from a 3-day event, but the basics are, if you're not measuring and getting your team to report to you what they're doing, I have a news flash that if they're not willing to, you know, get on a call in the morning, you know, proclaim their numbers, where do you think those numbers are? And I'll just put that out to anybody. Like if they're not willing to come on or they miss the calls, do you think their numbers are great, or do you think that their numbers are non-existent?
Rob, they all think they're doing the work, but once you measure it, they realize they're not doing the work, right? And also, people trick themselves into, I made a dial. There's a difference between a dial and a conversation. A conversation is 3 minutes or longer. A dial is, I dialed the call and I felt good that I made a phone call. When Mojo tells you did 100 calls, you didn't do 100 calls, right?
Yep. But what you're saying about accountability, Glenn, for those who don't hear it, who haven't heard it before.
Accountability is love. If I really care about them, I hold them accountable.
Yep. And in this industry, I think most of the coaching that people pay for in this industry is about accountability. It's not generally about skills. Most people know what they should be doing, but they need somebody to hold them accountable and perhaps refine their skills. But I would say the accountability aspect is probably the biggest piece to coaching. Would you agree or disagree with that, Glenn?
Without it, you're a rudderless ship, right? You have no direction.
Yep. So, how many of us, like, does anybody want to volunteer how often you communicate with your team? Like, do you get together once a week? Do you have a call or a Zoom every morning?
So I'll be happy to share. I meet with my team for a 15-minute huddle on Monday mornings. We meet twice a month as a whole big team, once to go over team marketing, once to go over other team business. So I have a team meeting and then a team monthly marketing meeting. And then most of my agents I meet with once a week. Some of them it's twice a month for an hour, going over their business, going over any questions they have, and going over any items that I may have assigned to them from the prior week. And then obviously we have ad hoc calls, we're all in the office, let's just chat kind of thing. But those are the ones that are scheduled into the month.
And do they have a goal for, let's just say, a higher level, like appointments per week? Like, do you discuss that consistently?
So I don't necessarily have a goal for appointments per week, but I have a goal for calls per day, which varies based on each person and their specific goals and their current client base. So I have everybody break down their current client base into A's, B's, and C list clients, based on the motivation of the client and how quickly they're planning to move. And then based on where they fall within those three buckets, there's a requirement as to how often they should be reaching out to that person per week at minimum. And so because each person's list varies, the number of dials they have varies based on their current client base. Or prospect base, rather.
Now, and you choose to focus on dials as opposed to conversations?
Well, I think that it's touches, really. And so touches, depending on the client, some clients are more receptive to phone, whereas some clients are more receptive to text. But if they don't reply to you or they don't answer the phone, then it doesn't count as a touch.
Right. I mean, I think
and
at
emails
some point,
don't count. I tell them emails don't count. You can email somebody, 20 times a day. It doesn't count. You should still be emailing them, items that are popping up, but putting them on an MLS or KV Core, push out of their listings, that doesn't count towards, or touches with the client.
and Glenn, you're big on social, and you're not high on cold calling, correct?
Yeah, our calls are to Sphere and to people who come inbound to us.
Right. So basically you and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're using social to start the conversation, and then you take the conversation onto the phone or in person,
Yes.
because you can't have a meaningful conversation via at some point it has to come off of social, has to come off of text to be a real phone or a face-to-face appointment.
Correct.
And I don't know, Glenn, were most of the teams, like almost all the teams, had like a daily huddle or a daily meeting for accountability? Can you comment on that?
Every single one at the CSU conference, or Mastermind, I should say, everyone.
And how many teams were there approximately?
There was 20 teams. I was by far the smallest. Everyone else was doing somewhere in the range of 300 to 500 million. That was kind of the average per year, and the bigger hitters were doing 1.2, somewhere in that range.
$1 billion in business.
Yeah.
So it's good to be the smallest fish, because you have a lot to gain. Like you have a lot that you could pick up at that event, and you're saying that every single one of them had a daily accountability.
Everyone.
And what percentage of them was the team leader doing it, or did they have layers where they had delegated people, like squad leaders? Like, how do they manage that?
Yeah, any team that was over 70, it was someone dedicated to it. Anyone that was under 70, it was generally the team leader or someone directly. Part of the logic is that you just can't hand that task off, or it won't perform the way you would make it perform. But I will tell you that almost every team leader also said hardest thing they ever did was making sure they show up every day at that time. They said it was like you had to consider it like it was gold. Like that was the most important task on your calendar. It was hard. I suffered. It was hard. It was hard.
Right. So 100% of the top 20 to 25 team leaders were having a daily accountability. I don't know. That speaks pretty loudly, in my opinion.
Rob, I think of it this way. Like when I was not doing that, I'd regroup on Friday and an entire week passed. Right? Like life had already passed you by. It doesn't pass you by anymore because you were held accountable today for what you didn't do yesterday. Very fresh, very top of mind, right?
And I guess, and I apologize. I thought you had exited a person or two when this happened, but that's quite amazing that you put this accountability in, and most people, or virtually everybody, shows up on a daily basis, and everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid and joining into the culture of success, right? And I don't think I even need to add anything to that. I'm going to say most of us on this call are not doing a daily call, and you rarely go over 15, or you never go over 15 minutes.
Oh, it's 15 minutes and you're out. Because we 3 days a week we have you might call it role playing, but I call them conversation mastery calls that are right after, and we move right into those. We don't allow it to. There's no dilly dallying on that call.
Yeah, otherwise people will not see value. They'll show up late, or they won't show up at all.
Agents love to talk.
and this is not, FYI, this is not a setup. I didn't talk to Glenn in advance about it, but it's really reinforcing to see that these teams that have they probably made a lot of mistakes to get to that point, right, Glenn?
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're a smaller team, 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, let's get our arms around it before it gets away from us. And once you have that, once you have the accountability and the culture, it will be contagious in a positive way, right?
Rob, I'll make the offer too that anyone, if you want to join one of our morning calls, I would ask that. I know we have a lot of people on the call, but if you want to join one, just text me or email me on the side, and you're welcome to pop into one and see how it goes. I'll have one person on the call. I don't like it's pretty rigid, so I don't want to make it disruptive, but I absolutely welcome anyone to join.
And I see some people on this call. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know that what's happened in their instances as they're building teams, Glenn, is the team members, they keep saying, well, what are you going to do for me? can you give me more leads? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I feel the pain because it's basically just, it's like the broker model, except for, you have less mouths to feed. And, I believe it was on Friday, I talked about, would you rather have somebody that you give 2,000 leads to that converts, 0.1%, or they give 100 leads that converts at 10%. Okay. And, obviously mathematically, the 100 leads at 10% is a lot better. But if you take a look at it from a personal level, who would want to try to chase down, 20 closings out of 2,000 leads? That's insane. But if you leave agents to their own, they're going to say, give me more leads, give me more leads, give me more leads. Does that resonate with that? And I want to take it away from you, Glenn. I want to take it to somebody else and say, maybe Chopper, like, do you see like agents that say, I want more leads when they don't really need more leads? They need better systems and follow-up.
Oh yeah, they're notorious for that. Gimme, 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 and then they think they got a basket full, and then they just look at the basket and they don't jump into it. So no, I agree with you. It's what we said earlier, quality over quantity.
And Chopper,
Glenn
at some
Glary,
point,
Glenn Rock.
and at some point, it's like feeding the dog. Like, when I was a kid, I had a German Shepherd, and you give it one bowl of food, it would eat the whole bowl. I give it another, like it would keep eating until it probably died because it just saw food and ate it. I think agents, if they just want more and more leads, that they're hoping for like that Cinderella lead where they go out and show $1 million house and sell it in one day. But that's really not helpful for them to give them more leads when they really need to have better systems to have a higher quality life and a better outcome. Like chasing.
The other problem you have is when they got a bunch of leads in the funnel, they kind of take their foot off the pedal. So you got to keep them motivated and keep them going. Don't let them settle.
They have a false sense of something good's going to happen, right? So for me, it's a mindset shift. Like if I had 2,000 leads that I had to follow up on to close 20, even if my team leader gave me all those leads, I'd be like, oh my God, stop it, please. It's unmanageable, right? But if I had 100 and I had a system and I had the skills to convert them and I converted that same number, how much less stress does that put on the system when you have that?
Yeah.
So much less. So if we all can just focus on those productivity per agent or productivity per person, that's the biggest piece. Recruiting, once you have the systems down, you can add controlling your expenses and measuring, making data-driven decisions, and then increase your income per transaction. I think is probably the hardest one and probably the one that I would spend the least time on. So we're over time already. I apologize for the bad connection that I had, but yeah, I hope that this is helpful. I hope that as team leaders, you have more frequent meetings with your team members and you have them more succinct, more intentional, deliberate, and your team sees value in the love that you're putting on them by holding them accountable. And, feel free to use the example of, hey, if I gave you, 2,000 of the best Zillow leads, you probably would close nothing because you wouldn't remember who you spoke to. You'd be confusing everybody. You'd be driving around and they would feel like they don't have your attention. That's like an over exaggeration to get the point across. So I hope that this is helpful, and I'll see everybody on the Friday call. Thank
Thanks,
you
Rob.
for joining.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.